are listening to In a City Like Yours, a semi-monthly podcast featuring interesting people with interesting life stories. This podcast may contain language and/or subject matter not suitable for all audiences. Listener discretion is advised.
I'm your host, Michael G. Moore. On this episode, I chat with John. John was bullied from 6th grade through high school, and even into his adult years. Because of this, he developed PTSD, anxiety, and extreme depression, all of which would later help shape his personality. He was able to work through most of this with his involvement in theater and the visual arts. Today, he is a successful actor, director, and painter. He has conquered his psyche and come out shining. Here is John's story.
Hi, I'm John. I'm 41 years old. I'm an actor and I'm a visual artist and a writer, and I'm gay, and I'm bipolar, manic depressive, and so I have severe depression and PTSD from years of bullying in middle and high school. Well, growing up in elementary school and everything, I was a very happy child. There was a little bit of sexual molestation as a child from an uncle on my dad's side, but other than, that was, brief, and I didn't let that get me down, and I was a very happy child, and elementary school was great, and I had a lot of friends, and it was a wonderful time. And then they announced that they would be building a new middle school in our area, and then I would be the first class to start out there. I was going to start 6th grade the next year. I think this was like 1998. And I was going to start out 6th grade. And so I would be the first 6th grader to go to this new school. And next year when I started school, that's when everything changed. I don't know, I was kind of a quiet kid, and even though I had a lot of friends in the elementary school, but I got to middle school, I was very, very shy and quiet, and a lot of my friends didn't transfer over to that school, so I didn't know a lot of people. Plus, a lot of the 7th and 8th graders that were going to be at the high school, because that's normally where the 7th and 8th graders had been, they transferred over to that school. So there were a lot of kids there that were older than me, and it made me very nervous. I was not used to that, because at the elementary school they sort of kept us all separate. I guess I was about 11 or 12. This would have been 6th grade, so I was 11 or 12. So there were these 13, 14-year-olds that seemed like they were towering above me, and maybe a little shy, and so I was kind of quiet, and it took me a while to make friends, and I did make some friends, but I started to get picked on for being quiet and shy, and kept to myself, and I started hearing these words, faggot and queer, and I'm like, what is that? And I didn't realize at the time that I was gay. I didn't identify as anything back then. I was a kid, and I didn't understand what this was, and it over time it kept on happening, and I thought, what is going on here? My mother was kind of a pacifist. She if you started to fight, she stood up for herself, but for the most part she didn't believe in violence or anything. And my father was kind of an absent father. He was gone, work all the time, so I didn't really, get to know him. So nobody had really taught me about, fighting back. So I just kind of, took it and didn't really stand up for myself. I was very, very kind of meek. I sort of think of myself as kind of, to borrow the Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, I sort of think of myself as Daniel Tiger. That kind of very meek and quiet and, soft-spoken kind of person who's kind of, afraid of everything. So 6th grade, just, proceeded to get, worse and worse, and the bullying, got worse, and I, started to retreat into myself, and was just afraid of everything, I had a very bad, dyslexia when it came to math. I'm what's called dyscalculic. I have a bad thing with numbers, and so I couldn't pass, the 6th grade math, so I ended up having to repeat the 6th grade. So I thought, great, I'm going to have to go through this all over again. So I ended up repeating 6th grade, and my English class in that next year in the 6th grade was really one of the worst that I had of all time. The bullies there were just outright terrorists, and it actually got so bad that I started skipping that class, and I would go in, I would make it look like I had signed out for the day in the office. I still don't remember how I did this. It's ingenious, but I would make it look like I signed out for the day, and then I would go back to the next class, but I would hide out in the bathroom, and if a teacher or anything did the rounds, I would stand on the toilet, and so they wouldn't see me into there, and I hid out from that class for weeks at a time, and the teacher finally figured out something was up, and took me up to the office and said, look, if he's skipping my class, and they said, well, no, we've got records here saying he's just been signed out. He must have medical problems or something. His mother's been taking him home every day. And she's like, okay. And I never got in trouble for it. I totally got away with it. And I became friends with that teacher years later, and I always wanted to tell her what I'd done, but I never got around to telling her, and I lost touch with her. I still wonder what happened to her to this day. I've tried to look her up on Facebook, but I can't find her. But she was one of my favorite teachers. I loved her. She was brilliant. She read us all of the Roald Dahl books, all of them practically. But the students were just so horrible that I just couldn't stand it. And I mean, the things they would do, screaming and hitting, and it was a nightmare. I mean, I couldn't focus on my work. I couldn't, and I was, I loved school up until that point. I was, kind of a teacher's pet at elementary school. And so to not be able to focus on my work and not be able to do well in school, it was really beginning to get to me. And the teachers wouldn't, they wouldn't do anything about it. They would see it happening, and they would just let it happen. And, I think there was one counselor. I remember one counselor at the school that was very, she would listen and she would understand and, try to do her best, but, she couldn't make them stop. If she tried to talk to them, they just get worked, 10 times as bad because you ratted on them, and that just made it worse. And so I went through 6th grade again, and then I got 7th grade, and the kids, they got bigger and stronger, and the ones I remember in 7th grade that were the worst, I don't know why I remember this the most, but for some reason the black girls were the worst. They would really, I don't know if this was, I'm not trying to be racist or anything. I have many black friends, and I love all of them, but, I don't know if it was an urban thing or what, but they just loved to start fights with me, and then they would, they loved to get a rise out of me and see if they could try to get me upset, and then if I dared to fight back, then they got angry. And they would, hit me and everything, and
so they would physically abuse you, not just mental? It was physical.
Yeah, they'd, sit behind me and, pop me in the back of the head and throw things at me and, find me in the hallway and throw me up against the locker or throw me down the stairs. Yeah, so, that just got worse and worse. And, 8th grade got interesting because in 8th grade, by then I had kind of discovered that I was gay. And I met a boy in my 8th grade English class, and apparently he'd been going to school, with us forever, but I'd never, knew him. And, for some reason he started being nice to me one day. Kind of one thing led to another, and one weekend he ended up spending the night over at my house, and, we kind of got romantically involved. But the next week, when he got back to school, and I tried to talk to him, he started, being really mean and, picking on me and everything in front of everybody. And I realized, okay, he's, gonna save face, and, he would pick on me during the week, and then he would spend weekends at my house, and we would be like romantically involved. But he didn't, want anybody to think that he was gay, so he couldn't be nice to me during school. And I don't know why I let that go on, why I let myself, be disrespected like that. I guess I was so starved for attention or, some kind of physical contact that I, let that go on. And he was, he was very mentally, manipulative, and, would kind of blackmail me for, if I had something that he wanted, he would, threaten to tell, and I would, have to give it to him, and this and that just went on for a couple of years, and, well, I say went on for a couple of years, I mean, just went on for a while, and it only lasted that 1 year. So, 8th grade, I came out to my mom. She found a letter that I had kind of romantically written to myself about another boy, and came out to her. She was fine, but I wasn't ready to come out to, students, because I don't think I wanted to admit to them, that they were right about me. So, I wasn't out yet, and, so they just kept on with the queers and the faggots and everything. And I thought, well, if they think that that's such a bad thing, I definitely, I just don't want to come out. So I stayed in the closet, and everybody was supposed to transfer to this local high school that was down the street, and I decided I'd maybe try to make a change. And I told my mother I wanted to go to this other high school that was a half hour north. It was the only other one that I was eligible to go to, that I could get bused to. There was kind of a magnet school. I say magnet school, that's, kind of in our area, that means, it's kind of a improved, educational, social, they're just considered better schools, but they expect more of you. And I couldn't get my grades up well enough to get into that school. I knew I probably would have been accepted as gay and would have, made friends and everything, but I couldn't keep my grades up well enough to get into that school. But, so I decided, I'd go to this other school. So I got there, first day of, high school, and I thought, I'm free, I'm away from all these people, I can start over. Well, one student from my middle school decided to go there too. Just one. And she started it all over again. So first thing she could, she started the rumors, and then started and spread like wildfire. And, looking back, I should have just said, yeah, I'm gay, to hell with you, I don't care what you think. But, this was the early 90s, and, there were still very few, gay characters on TV and, in the media, and, it was still considered, a very bad thing for the most part. AIDS was still, raging and was considered a gay disease and this and that. So we had all the, deck stacked against us still back then. And, so I, rather than fight back, I just, let that go on. And I did do one thing that was kind of good for me. I decided not to take gym, which, had been a nightmare for me in middle school. That was, cause I'm very bad when it comes to physical, sports and things. I'm just, typical, I'm just not good at sports. So I decided to take ROTC instead. And that would at least get me away from the bullies for an hour a day because, it's very structured and, they all have to remain, quiet and disciplined and, they report to the, head general or head, whatever. I can't remember what they all called each other back then. We all were, very yes sir and no sir, and everybody minded their P's and Q's. So that was a relief. I hated wearing the damn uniform once a week, but I got used to it. So high school just was, middle school just magnified, they were bigger and stronger and it just got more violent and here I am, still trying to come to terms with it, discovering who I am and, I started making my own, decisions for myself and dressing, taking my own clothes and things. And I remember one funny thing was, me and my friends, we would shop at all these, these designer clothes places and, I was wearing all these nice, designer clothes, but, this was a rural school up in, the northern part of the parish. So these kids were wearing, like country clothes. And so even though I'm, sitting here like, the height of fashion, I look like the freak because I'm not wearing the farmer's clothes that everybody else is. And I thought, people this is just ridiculous. So, even when I try to fit in and, go with the flow, I don't fit in. And, unlike in, 8th grade where I at least had that one, guy, he transferred to the local school, so I didn't see him again, and I was actually glad to be rid of him because, he was very manipulative and mean. There were no gay people at my high school. There was one male cheerleader who it turns out, years later, I'm friends with him on Facebook now, and he is gay, but I don't think he was open back then. And even though, everybody knew he was gay, nobody picked on him for some reason because he was well respected. I don't know what he was doing that I wasn't. But, so there was no openly gay. There was no, nobody to socialize with about that. So, I did have a few friends, but for the most part, I was still a loner. And, I remember these two boys in 9th grade they would pretend to make out with each other next to me to try to see if I would get interested. And then so they're trying to prove that I was gay, I guess. And then there was one boy that was very physically abusive, and years later, he became kind of a big time local musician. I see him online, and I just want to, say to people, do you not realize what an asshole this guy is? Because, years later, I approached him about, the bullying, and he claims, not to remember it, and, just kind of pushed me aside and dismissed me, and I thought, yeah, you'll never change. And, one of my good friends from back then is actually friends on Facebook with one of my bullies from high school, and I've yet to approach her about that. I just want to say to her, do you not remember this guy? Do you not remember what he did to me? But I haven't said anything. But, so 10th grade came along, and I decided I just couldn't take it anymore. And, I told my mom, look, I'm sorry, I can't do this anymore. I'm going to kill myself. I got my mom to let me transfer to the local, adult education program, and I got my GED and got out. I think I ended up graduating. I was 16 when I left. I was a sophomore, but I ended up graduating a year later, so I graduated when I was 17. So I ended up graduating a year early with an earlier class. So I didn't actually graduate with my graduating class. But, I had the option of, actually going to the graduation ceremony, even though I got my GED. I was allowed to pick, what high school I wanted my ring from. And for some reason, I still picked that god-awful high school. I should have picked, some other school and lied, but I couldn't lie to myself. So I have, a ring from that school, but I didn't go to the graduation ceremony. I didn't want to be around those kids. I knew they would never have taken me back or accepted me even for that one day. So but I didn't, I didn't have a graduation ceremony. I didn't have a prom. I sort of think of those years as, being robbed of, all those experiences that I should have had because of everything that happened. It's like a big chunk of my life was missing or taken from me. So I graduated, I got my GED and everything, but, over the years, it never left me, and I, been haunted by it, ever since, and I, developed kind of a PTSD, I get nightmares every so often of fighting off bullies, and, I get panic and anxiety attacks, and, I somewhat think that this may be where part of my bipolar came from, because I was diagnosed with that at age 20, and, nowadays, back then I was so, meek and quiet, and now, I will start fights with a drop of a hat and be very opinionated, and, I've driven a lot of people away over the years because of my loud mouth and opinions on, Facebook and this and that, and I wish, people would understand I don't mean to be that way. I just, I spent so many years without a voice that, now I sort of am, a little too loud for my own good, and I still feel like, that kid that's trying to say, listen to me and, stand up for myself. So I don't mean to be so, opinionated and brash. I just I'm still not used to having a voice, And, I read something yesterday that said, we remain, as human beings, we remain at the age in which we were loved the least. And I really feel that that's true. I still feel like that kid, being picked on, and hiding in the corners and, hoping just to get through the day without, something horrible happening. And, now I work as a film actor, and I've had some great experiences, but in some ways, things don't change. I'm still haunted by this, and I have a stalker locally. He's, I'm not going to give away who he is or what he does, but he's, posted things online and sued me for speaking back about him. And, so, in some ways I'm still being bullied by certain people. And, like I said, I take medication for this, but, so yeah, I'm doing okay now, but in some ways, it just, the past doesn't leave me.
Well, why don't you talk a little bit about your theater experience? I feel like that was probably something that kind of solidified your strength.
Yes, it saved me. In ninth grade, I don't remember if I saw something in the paper or maybe on TV or what, but I told my mom I wanted to take a local acting class. And I went to it was in a nearby city across the river, and this woman, when they're teaching the class, she was very challenging and very commanding, and I was actually terrified of her. She still kind of terrifies me to this day, to be honest. But she was a wonderful woman, and she taught me so many things. She just brought something out of me that I'd never experienced before. And that's when I discovered that, I could act and that I, was actually good at something. And I don't know if it was, the fact that I got to be another person for a little while and, the pain went away or, what, but, I started doing that and, started getting little roles, in local theater and, that, kept on over the years, and I went away to college and studied it. I kind of had a breakdown and was diagnosed as bipolar, so I actually didn't finish my degree, but I still learned, a lot. I went for quite a few years, actually, and took theater courses and everything, and came back and kept doing that, and now I direct plays, and I act in plays, and I act in film, and it's so freeing for me. It's truly my my passion. And I think I would have been, dead a couple of years later if I hadn't discovered that, if I hadn't found something that, took me out of myself and gave me a purpose.
And you're also a visual artist.
Yes. Many years later, I, just one day picked up a paintbrush and, threw some paint on the canvas. And, I don't think my early pieces are very good. I paint abstract, so they don't necessarily have to look like anything. But, originally I painted in acrylic and did that for a few years. And, now I paint in, it's called alcohol ink, which is kind of a very unique, interesting art form. You'd have to look it up online to really understand it, but it's very colorful and vivid, and the colors sort of stimulate my mind and take me out of the depression for a little while while I'm working on them. And yesterday I met with a critic that was in town, and they seem to think that I should do this full time, and I'm going to have some solo shows coming up, and so I'm just now starting to be taken seriously for that. So that's kind of exciting. I never thought of myself as an artist before, but so I'm really enjoying that.
So you're 41 now, is that right?
Yes, I'm 41. I'll be 42 in December.
So it seems like that you've come to terms with most of your bullying. I mean, I know you have PTSD, and that's still through your art, both acting and visual. It seems that was probably in the medications, I'm sure, is the main thing that has really got you through.
Yeah. I won't lie. I won't lie and say that I'm not, a little bitter. I mean, there are times where I'm mad as hell. I sit down and I think about what happened to me, and I think, I'm realizing there are other kids that probably had it worse, that were, being abused at home and this and that. But I think, I should have had to be able to lead a normal, everyday, life, and that just wasn't, that was just taken from me. But at the same time, I think to myself, you made it through, and you're stronger because of that. And nobody can take that away from you now. Nobody can hurt you now. Especially since at one point you were suicidal. Yeah, definitely. I think to myself, I never would have done that. I could not have put my poor mother through that. But I also look at other kids that have, committed suicide from bullying, and I think, I understand their pain, and I know what they were going through. And I also, and this is going to sound, pretty controversial, but I also look at, certain school shootings, and I also sort of see, in some ways where those kids were coming from, in a way, kids that probably were being very bullied, maybe not all of them, definitely, but, some of them were probably being very bullied or had it bad, abuse and this and that. And, no kid, I don't think any child is born evil. Everybody had something happen to them that led to where they ended up.
Something I ask all the people I've been interviewing is, what words of wisdom do you have to offer those who may be going through what you went through? Well, a couple of years ago, somebody came out with a program called It Gets Better. And it's, to teach kids that, if you could just hang on, that, you will get past this, and you will be your own person, and you will become an adult, and they can't hurt you anymore. And I really think that's the truth. It does get better. If you can just think to yourself, these people don't matter. They are just insignificant. In 5 years, 10 years time, they won't be able to touch me anymore. I will be away from you. I will be free, and I will be my own person. And I really wish I could have told myself back then. I would have saved myself so much grief. But, for anybody that's going through that now, just realize, it does end. And you will be away from them, and they don't matter. They are so insignificant
in the scheme of things, and they are so unhappy with their own lives that they are taking it out on you. And, you know, you shouldn't be afraid of them. You should pity them. So, you know, it does get better. You know, if there are people that, you know, if you are going through this, you know, reach out to somebody. You know, you don't have to wait, you know, and suffer in silence. You know, there are people out there. There are programs that, you know, their phone, you know, chat lines, and you can find friends. You can confide in people. You know, you don't have to suffer like I did in silence.
Of course, that was before the internet too.
Yes, it was pre-internet, and, you know, I think that if, you know, I'd grown up in, you know, today, I would have been much better off, but in some ways, kids, you know, today have it just as bad, but at least they can get on the internet and see, or look on TV and see other people like them that are, you know, doing okay. But yeah, back then in the 80s and, you know, early 90s, we didn't have cell phones, and we didn't have, you know, internet for the most part, and it was just a very rough time for kids like me back then.